Right now, somewhere in the world, someone is cracking open a cold beer. Someone else is pouring wine. Another person is toasting at a wedding. And a few are drinking alone, quietly, the way humans have always done when the world gets too loud. You probably think of alcohol as a modern habit, maybe even a bad one. But what if drinking is one of the oldest things your species has ever done? What if the story of alcohol doesn't start at a bar? It doesn't start in ancient Rome, or ancient Egypt, or even the first human settlements. It starts before humans were fully human, and it starts with rotten fruit. 10 million years ago, your ancestors were not human. They were apes, living in trees, eating fruit the way you eat chips, constantly, mindlessly, because it was everywhere. But the climate was changing. Forests were shrinking. Fruit that used to grow year-round was becoming seasonal. And when fruit falls to the ground and sits in the heat, something happens to it. It ferments. Sugars convert to ethanol. The fruit begins to rot in a very specific, very useful way. And here is where your story begins. In 2014, a team of researchers led by Matthew Kerrigan at Santa Fe College published a landmark study in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. They analyzed the alcohol processing enzyme ADH4, the enzyme that lets you digest ethanol, across 28 different mammals, including humans, chimps, and gorillas. What they found changed everything. Around 10 million years ago, a single genetic mutation rewired the ADH4 enzyme in one branch of primates. Suddenly, that branch could metabolize ethanol 40 times more efficiently than before. That branch was your ancestors, and the timing was not an accident. This mutation appeared right when those early apes were transitioning from tree life to ground life, when they started eating fallen, fermented fruit out of necessity. The ones who could process alcohol survived better. They got more calories from food others could not eat. They competed for resources others would not touch. You did not inherit a drinking problem. You inherited a survival advantage. But surviving on rotten fruit is one thing. Actually making alcohol on purpose, that is something else entirely. The first deliberate fermented drink your ancestors ever consumed was almost certainly not wine. It was not beer, it was honey. Wild bees build hives in trees. Rain floods the hive. Honey mixes with water and wild yeast in the air. Over days, it ferments into a primitive mead. Researchers believe early hominids stumbled onto this long before agriculture existed. There is no hard archaeological proof yet. Organic materials like this rarely survive millions of years. But the behavioral and chemical evidence points here. The first solid alcoholic evidence of intentional alcohol production comes from a cave in what is now Israel. The site is called Rakafet Cave. It is a Natufian burial site, a culture that existed roughly 13,000 years ago, before farming, before cities, before writing. And inside that cave, archaeologists from the University of Haifa, led by Li Liu and colleagues, found stone mortars with traces of wheat, barley, and oat residue. Not just food residue, fermented residue. These people were brewing a beer-like drink. They were storing it in carved stone containers, and they were using it in funeral rituals. Think about that. Before humans figured out how to farm reliably, before they had permanent homes, they had already figured out how to brew. There is a theory, controversial but fascinating, that alcohol did not follow civilization. Alcohol created it. This is called the Drunken Monkey Hypothesis, first proposed by biologist Robert Dudley at UC Berkeley in 2000, and later expanded into the beer before bread hypothesis by archaeologist Patrick McGovern at the University of Pennsylvania. The argument goes like this. Humans were nomadic. They followed food. They had little reason to stay in one place. But fermentation requires time. You plant grain, you wait, you harvest, you brew, you store, you protect your supply. And once you are protecting a fermented supply, you need walls. You need community. You need rules about who gets how much and when. McGovern spent decades analyzing residues in ancient pottery. His lab at Penn developed methods to detect organic compounds in ceramic vessels thousands of years old. And what he found, site after site, was that the oldest containers, older than the containers used for storing plain food, showed signs of alcohol. At Jiahu, a Neolithic site in China dating to 7000 BCE, McGovern's team found the world's oldest confirmed alcoholic beverage, a fermented mix of rice, honey, and fruit. It predates Chinese writing by 5,000 years, in the same region where beer was being brewed before farming was fully established. The pattern is consistent. Wherever you find the earliest traces of settled human life, you find the earliest traces of intentional fermentation. Not because ancient humans were addicted, but because fermented drinks were safer, more caloric, more socially binding, and arguably more important than plain water in a world where water sources were often contaminated. The oldest known brewery, with actual equipment, not just residue, was discovered in 2018 in another Israeli cave system. Archaeologists from Stanford University and the University of Haifa, led by Danny Nadel, excavated the Hilazon Toktit cave site and found a Natufian brewing facility approximately 13,000 years old. Mortars, storage pits, fermentation vessels, all used to produce a thick, wheat and barley-based brew, consumed not as everyday refreshment, but as part of ritual feasts for the dead. Alcohol, from the very beginning, was not just a drink. It was a technology, a social glue, a ritual medium, a way to dissolve the boundaries between the living and the dead, between strangers, between enemies, sharing a cup in a moment of uneasy peace. Wine came later, but not much later. The earliest direct chemical evidence of wine comes from a site called Haji Firuz Tepe in the Zagros Mountains of what is now northwestern Iran, dated to approximately 5,400 to 5,000 BCE. Patrick McGovern's team found a yellowish residue in a 6-liter ceramic jar. Analysis revealed tartaric acid, the chemical fingerprint of grapes, along with tree resin, which ancient winemakers used as a preservative. Someone, 9,000 years ago, was making wine and figuring out how to keep it from turning to vinegar. Then in 2017, another discovery pushed wine even further back. A joint team of researchers from the University of Toronto and institutions in Georgia, the country, not the state, excavated sites near the village of Gadatrili Gora. They found large ceramic storage jars with grape residue dating to approximately 6,000 BCE, the oldest wine evidence ever found. Published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. Georgia, as it turns out, may be the birthplace of wine. The Georgians, for what it is worth, have not stopped drinking it. Here's something that will make you see every bar, every party, every awkward first date differently. When you drink alcohol, a set of ancient systems inside you activate. Dopamine rises. Social anxiety drops. You feel, briefly, like the barriers between you and other people have thinned. Researchers have found that this effect is not a bug in human neurology. It is a feature that evolved alongside social bonding. Robin Dunbar, anthropologist at Oxford University, published research in 2017 showing that people who drink in social settings, as opposed to alone, report stronger feelings of social connection, increased pain tolerance, and higher laughter frequency. The alcohol was doing what it has always done, dissolving the distance between people. In small doses, in social contexts, your brain was designed, through millions of years of selection, to respond to ethanol as a bonding signal, as a marker of trust, as a shared vulnerability. You lower your guard, so does the person across from you. Suddenly, you are not just two strangers. You are two mammals who just consumed a mild poison together and survived. Trust established. Of course, the story of alcohol is not all connection and ancient ritual. The same biology that made ethanol useful also made it dangerous. The transition from occasional fermented fruit to daily distilled spirits was not gradual. It was violent. The Industrial Revolution created a gin epidemic in 18th century England so severe that Parliament passed multiple emergency acts trying to control it. Cheap, highly potent alcohol flooded cities where people had been ripped from rural life and thrown into brutal, disorienting urban poverty. Alcohol did not cause that poverty, but it became the place where the pain of it lived. That tension, alcohol as social technology, alcohol as escape, alcohol as ritual, alcohol as destruction, has existed for as long as humans have been humans. It is not a modern problem. It is a 10-million-year-old relationship with a complicated history. So the next time you raise a glass, consider what you are actually doing. You are continuing a ritual that began before your species had language. You are using the same metabolic machinery that let your pre-human ancestors eat fallen fruit in a shrinking forest and survive when others could not. You are doing something that Natufian people did in a cave 13,000 years ago while burying their dead, creating a moment of shared experience, of altered consciousness, of community in the face of something too large to face alone. Alcohol did not come from a factory. It came from a forest floor, a genetic mutation, a flooded beehive, and the very human need to sometimes, just for a moment, lower your guard and let someone in. That is what is in the glass. It always has been.